Next, I want to introduce you to Dr. Christine Ralston. Hailing originally from Elkhart, Indiana, Dr. Christine Ralston now calls Fort Smith home, where she resides with her husband of 25 years, Rick. Their journey together has been blessed with two daughters, Hannah and Brenna, both of whom have proudly graduated or are in the process of graduating from the esteemed University of Arkansas. This leaves Christine as the only member of her tight-knit family without her name etched on the illustrious senior walk. A seasoned educator, Christine's career spans the realms of elementary education, where she once stood at the helm as principal. Her insatiable quest for knowledge led her to Purdue University, where she earned her PhD in educational leadership. For the past 12 years, Christine has been a stalwart figure in higher education, with the last 9 years dedicated to the University of Arkansas. Here she holds the distinguished titles of Teaching Associate Professor in Elementary Education and Assistant Department Head for Curriculum and Instruction. In her academic pursuits, Christine finds her true calling, equipping and empowering educators, not only for the great state of Arkansas, but also for the broader educational landscape. Her passion lies in shaping the future of teaching, ensuring that educators are equipped with the tools and knowledge they need to make a meaningful impact, both locally and beyond. Please welcome Dr. Christine Ralston.
Teachers in the audience?
Yes. Teachers are some of my favorite people in the world. More than a decade ago, I realized that many of my teacher friends did not share my love of data. Yep, I said it. I love data. And this made me curious. It made me so curious that I decided to do some research. Yeah, I collected data about why teachers don't like data. I've learned some things since then, so let's talk about it. How not to feel like crap when you look at data. Before we talk about data, let's talk about something we probably have in common. Let's talk about coffee. Anybody love coffee? Have you ever noticed when you are in a drive-through line and you finally get to the speaker to place your order for your coffee, and then suddenly there's nobody in front of you, and you go from the speaker to the window and your coffee's just waiting there for you? Well, I really wondered about that, and then I got some insider information from a barista. It seems they track order times. You guessed it, from the speaker to the window. It seems that from the time they take your order till the time they give you your coffee, that would be a good measure of customer service. But you understand the problem, right? This problem is so common, it has a name. It's called Goodhart's Law. Goodhart's Law states, when a measure becomes a target, it ceases to be a good measure. I wonder if anything like that happens in education around the data that we collect. When we look at standardized test scores, how do we know if we've done well? We've created a measure that becomes a target. Experts on school improvement and data-driven decision-making suggest teachers engage in an inquiry process for continuous improvement. That means we ask questions. But who gets to ask the questions? What answers can standardized test data provide? And what happens if we can't change the things that are the answers to those questions? Sometimes we realize that the data we have has limitations. It doesn't give us the answers to the questions that we have, or we don't have power to change the things that we need to change. That's what happens when we start with the data. And that has a name too. It's called the validity paradox. You see, validity lies in the interpretation of the results. So, do we settle for answers to questions that we never asked? because those are the answers we can get from the data we have. Let's consider standardized test scores. I can notice that a class of students scored below the target for mathematics. I can notice that they did not score as well in a particular area of mathematics, say numbers and operations. What questions do I ask? Do I focus on the cause? Do I conduct a 5 why for root cause analysis? Do I look at individual student performance? Do I look at the state standards? Do I consider other factors that might have impacted student performance, like the curriculum they had last year, or where we are in the scope and sequence? Or do I recognize that standardized test scores maybe point me in a direction, but they don't provide me the information that I need to teach the students in my classroom and to improve my teaching? Do I give another assessment? Do I collect more data? How is inquiry ever going to work in this scenario? There are so many questions. And faced with the complexity of teaching and learning and a measure that's become a target, do we fall prey to Goodhart's law? That is why we feel like crap when we look at data. So what do teachers think about this? One teacher told me, "What kind of teacher am I? Look at these results. They're terrible. I must be a terrible teacher." And then I'm embarrassed. When we feel pressure to improve scores, sometimes we take actions that manipulate the system without actually providing better results. At the coffee shop, wait times are not shortened overall, just the section of the wait that gets measured gets shortened, and the result of that drive-through line that blocks traffic probably will make me choose someplace else to get my coffee today. For standardized tests, teachers feel pressure to teach to the test. They do more test prep and they do more review. And the research is clear. Cramming works for improving test scores, but not for improving student learning. Customer satisfaction is correlated to speaker to window times, and student learning is correlated to standardized test scores. Test scores are easier to measure, but they're also easier to manipulate. And it's just not that simple. What if we answered the question that should be answered instead of the questions that can be answered simply because we have some data? It's not that we avoid the questions. The research really does suggest that a question is what we need. E.E. Cummings wrote, "Always the beautiful answer who asks a more beautiful question." So what if we need is a more beautiful question? Instead of asking how we can raise test scores, what if we asked, how do we create schools where teachers love teaching? Or how do we create classrooms where students love learning? If teachers love teaching and students loved learning, would test scores improve? As a former school administrator and a professor of elementary education, I've interviewed a lot of teachers. When asked, "Why do you want to be a teacher?" the most common answers are something like, "I love it when that light bulb goes off and you can see that a student has learned something and their face just lights up." Or, "School was really hard for me and I had this teacher who cared about me and she helped me learn, and I want to do that for other kids." Teachers love it when their students learn. And students love it when their teachers know them and help them learn. So, is there a way that data from a test could help us do that? I want you to think about it like this. I want you to think about the data as a snapshot. It's like a group picture. And when you're in a group picture, what's the first thing you do?
Look for yourself.
You look for yourself. And there I am. How do I look? And then you look at other people in the picture. And then finally, you can see the big picture. I'm so glad you knew the answer to my question. I'm so excited. So excited. But how do teachers see themselves in the data? And how can we shift our focus from ourselves to our students? What if we could actually do more with less data? I think what we need is some insider information. Let me show you something. You got a sneak peek. All right, so we asked this question of 85 second graders. I'll give you a few seconds to find the answer. Ready? In case it's been a while since you've had to do second grade math, the answer is B. All right, so only 24 of the 85 second graders asked this question correctly. That sounds bad. That feels like crap. Of the students who marked an incorrect answer on this question, 56 of them answered, you know what they answered, don't you? A. 56 of them answered A. When I shared this information with second grade teachers, they immediately knew what they needed to do to teach their students. They could identify which students understood the place value concept of converting tens to hundreds, and they could identify which students had a partial understanding or a misunderstanding. Yes, you don't get that from statewide standardized test scores. You get that from classroom assessment. Some powerful things happened with this one question. Formative assessments help us focus on our students and what they need. And the results of formative assessments don't just add up, they compound. James Clear, in his book Atomic Habits, tells us measurement is a lagging indicator. If we want to make a change, we need to look at our current trajectory instead of our current results. And when I think about it, formative assessments are like atomic assessments. They are small things that have the potential to make a big difference in teaching and learning. So the answer, it's what you're waiting for. How not to feel like crap when you look at data? Well, if you feel like crap when you look at data, I'm happy to tell you that is not a valid interpretation of the results. And if someone wants to judge your teaching or your school based solely on standardized test scores, tell them to Google validity paradox. That will keep them busy for a while. Don't look for yourself in the data. That's not a picture of you. Realize the information you have from standardized tests isn't the best data you have to teach your students. Instead of focusing on test scores, consider the power of formative assessments. Those atomic assessments have the potential to fuel great teaching and learning in your classroom. So you already know, I love a good cup of coffee. And you know what else? When I pull up to the drive-thru and the barista says, "Is this Hannah's mom?" So customer service is a lot more than the time from the speaker to the window, and great schools are a lot more than standardized test scores. If we misunderstand the purpose of the data, we misunderstand the data. Teachers empower data. If you want to have a great school, your greatest resource is not your data, it's your teachers. Thank you. Teachers empower data. Data, it's a four-letter word that sometimes makes us want to say four-letter words. Love, it's possible. Thank you.